Welcome back, class. I hope you guys are doing well. I did want to make a comment on the exams, exam number 1 for world history. You guys should have received those back already. I scanned them. For some reason, I could not get my scan to do 4 pages in the same PDF. It was because I was using an eye scanner for my iPhone. But I couldn't get the PDF in the same. So anyway, you all got 4 individual pages, PDFs, emailed to you. I hope you were able to open those and get a look at your exams. Everyone did really well. I mean, it was really good to see how well you guys did. Maybe I should make the exams a little harder, or maybe put some more difficult bonus question on your exam. But you guys did really well for exam number 1. The proctors did a great job. I know that's kind of old-fashioned, but it's pretty easy. Just with a couple of email clicks, and everyone's able to get the exam, and you guys can take it. So everything worked out really well, and I'm glad how smoothly everything went. I hope it was smooth for you guys also, that you just showed up where your proctor was and you were able to take the exam. So we'll continue that process for exam number 2. So we are going to continue, or finish actually, our lecture on ancient Egypt. And we're going to be looking today at the pharaohs, again, the main ones that we want to study, and definitely look at King Tut. I really enjoy King Tut because of my interest in British history. Great Britain controlled Egypt for a long time, and in 1922, King Tut's tomb was discovered, and one of the men who was involved in that was Lord Carnarvon. Lord Carnarvon was an earl in England in 1922, and he actually was the man who lived in Highclere Castle. That's the seat for the Earl of Carnarvon. And Highclere Castle, if you are into a recent TV series, is the filming location of Downton Abbey. And Lord Carnarvon in 1922 was very interested in Egyptology and archaeology, and he was very involved in the financing and searching for King Tut's tomb. So one of the videos that you'll be watching in the next part on Moodle, which I guess will be tomorrow if you're doing it in that kind of an order, session 3 for this week, is a YouTube video on the discovery of King Tut's tomb. So you'll see that there. Pretty interesting. I really enjoy that time period of history in Great Britain. So we're going to dive into our study here of the pharaohs. Okay, students, we're going to move now into our final PowerPoint for ancient Egypt, and we'll be looking today at some of the other pharaohs that are important in Egypt and that we should know. Okay, so this guy here on the screen, Thutmose III, who we just talked about in our previous lecture, as we closed out our previous lecture. He is known as the Napoleon of Egypt because he conquered more land than any pharaoh before or after him. The largest empire conquered and ruled by one king, and he created great wealth in Egypt because of Nubian gold, extending down into Nubia and getting the gold from there. Now there's a map on page 55, I believe, in the textbook, and you can see the largest empire that is ruled by one king. I'm just going to open my textbook up here to make sure I have the right page number for this, and version 6 or 6th edition. No, it's not the right page number, so you can ignore page 55 there on the screen. Let me just turn here in the book. It looks like page 57 is Imperial Egypt, 1400 BC, New Kingdom. Okay, so if you want to take a look at that, you can go ahead and take a look at that map. But the point is that Thutmose III, Napoleon of Egypt, conquered the most land. He was a brilliant general who never lost a battle, unlike the Napoleon Bonaparte, who lost battles. Napoleon of Egypt, Thutmose III, he never lost a battle. He was an excellent administrator. He was a statesman. He was an accomplished horseman, an archer, a very athletic man. He also enjoyed art and was a patron of the arts. He conducted 16 campaigns into Palestine, Syria, and Nubia. And one aspect of his conquering these people was that he was always humane to the people that he conquered. And basically what happened was it caused them to keep the peace. They were invaded but treated well, and so it kept the peace in the region. And that, again, allowed for more prosperity. He wasn't having to worry about having to fight battles all the time. Once he conquered, he was able to then focus on prosperity. And his impact on Egyptian culture is profound. He basically was a national hero and was revealed for a long time after this. So that is Thutmose III. Okay, we have there's a map, and I'm not sure why. Man, this slide's messed up. It says Old Kingdom. That's not Old Kingdom. I believe that's the New Kingdom. All right, so New Kingdom. The previous slide was New Kingdom also. I don't know why it said Old Kingdom. Probably forgot to change it. But we have Amenhotep II. Okay, this is an important one for you guys to know. Amenhotep II. He was the pharaoh of the Exodus. Okay, he was the guy that Moses had to deal with. Okay, Amenhotep II was not the oldest son of his father, Thutmose III. And this is important because if he had been the oldest, that 10th plague would have affected him. But it actually affected his son. So Amenhotep II, the pharaoh of the Exodus. Many Egyptologists are leading the charge to deny the veracity of the Exodus, attempting to persuade biblical scholars and the Christian populace at large that the Exodus never actually occurred. So secular archaeologists, they reject the Bible. They reject the Bible's record of what took place in Egypt with the Exodus, and so they will do anything they can to discredit it and say it never happened or whatever it is. And so the reason that's on that slide is just so that you have an understanding that everything of the Bible is under attack today, including the name of the pharaoh who was there with the Exodus. They say basically it never happened. So Amenhotep II. Okay, so we have Akhenaten, the son of Amenhotep III, who was leaning toward one God. Okay, so he was focusing that there should just be one God, Aten, and Akhenaten, you can see the italics there. The ending of his name was changed. Akhenaten went all the way to changing his name from Amenhotep IV to Akhenaten because he was leaning to there being one God, and obviously he would be looked at as that God. Okay, he built a new capital, Amarna. He outlawed the worship of other gods. He encouraged arts and building and innovations. The spending got out of hand, troubles brewed, and then he died. Okay. So that is Akhenaten. And here we go. Tutankhaten. You can see the Aten there at the end. Tutankhaten, who we call Tut. King Tut. That's who is probably the most well-known pharaoh, King Tut. So Tut was born Tutankhaten, which means the living image of Aten. After his father died, priests changed his name to Tutankhamen, a living living image of Amen. Okay, so you don't need to know all this, but it just shows that they would actually change their names to line up with a certain god. King Tut restored the old gods and moved the capital back to Thebes. So Amarna was abandoned. Actually, it was erased from official history as if that change had never happened. Okay, so I'm going to just give you some notes on King Tut, and you can jot these notes down if you want the best you can. This is just some information about King Tut. He ascended to power when he was 9 years old. He was called the boy king. But King Tut lived between 1341 BC to around 1323 BC. He was the 12th pharaoh of the 18th Egyptian dynasty. And during his reign, King Tut accomplished very little. He's very well known for one reason. And the reason he is known is because his tomb was discovered in 1922. And here's the unique aspect about his tomb. It was completely intact. It had never been robbed. It had never been invaded by a thief or someone going into it and messing around. It was completely intact, and it had a myriad of artifacts in it. And this was found in a time period when archaeology was really big in the early 20th century. And he is very famous because of his tomb being found. But King Tut accomplished very little during his reign. He was powerful because he was able to restore traditional Egyptian religion, polytheistic religion, which had been set aside by his father. But King Tut, he basically disappeared from history after his death. He was known as the Boy King, and he also died a very young man. He died at the age of 19 years old. And that was it for King Tut. And then he wasn't really even thought about until the discovery of the tomb in 1922. And then since then, there has been just so much study that has taken place on King Tut, making him one of the most well-known pharaohs of Egypt. So King Tut was buried in a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And it is believed that his early death necessitated a hasty burial in a small tomb. It was not a very large tomb. It was small. And it was packed with all kinds of artifacts. 70 days after his death, King Tut's body was laid to rest in the tomb, and then it was sealed. And then there were no known records of King Tut's death, and as a result, he basically was unknown for centuries. Even the location of the tomb was lost, as its entrance was covered by debris by the construction of another tomb nearby. So when the other tomb was being built, debris was dumped in front of King Tut's tomb entrance, and it was just covered up. much of what we know about King Tut today derives from the discovery of his tomb. So here's the deal with his discovery. British archaeologist Howard Carter had begun excavating in Egypt in 1891, and he was doing excavations for many years. After World War I, which ended in 1918, an intensive search for King Tut's tomb in the Valley of the Kings began. On November 26, 1922, Carter and his fellow archaeologist George Herbert, who was the Earl of Carnarvon, entered the interior chambers of the tomb. Although I'm not sure if George Herbert entered it, but definitely Carter did. I know that in the video you'll watch, you'll see that. I'm not sure, I don't think George Herbert was there. To their amazement, everything was basically found intact, and all of the contents were there. Inside one of the chambers, there was murals painted on the wall that told of King Tut's funeral and his journey to the afterworld. In the room, there were various artifacts for this journey. There were oil pitchers, there were perfumes, there were toys for him to entertain him. There was precious jewelry, statues of gold, statues made out of ebony, and there were 4 rooms in the tomb, and these rooms were so full of artifacts that Carter and his associates carefully excavated the tomb, and it took them for 17 years to basically excavate and catalog and preserve all of these artifacts. Just many, many years. That's the point. Many years to do this. Thousands of priceless objects. In regards to King Tut himself, his mummy is just fascinating. Found inside the tomb was a stone sarcophagus. It contained 3 coffins, one inside the other, with the final coffin made of gold. When the lid of the 3rd coffin was raised, King Tut's royal mummy was revealed, and it had been preserved for so many years. As archaeologists examined the mummy, that they found artifacts including bracelets, rings, and collars were actually on the mummy itself. King Tut died around 1323 BC, and he was 19 years old. And he was really only in power about 10 years or so in power. How did King Tut die? Researchers suggest that King Tut died from a gangrene infection resulted from a broken leg. Early investigators pointed to a bone fragment in King Tut's skull that proposed that he may have died from a blow to the head by a political rival. However, a full scan of his body in 2006 found damage to King Tut's skull occurred after his death due to bad handling of the mummy. In 2010, a study of King Tut's DNA found that he had malaria and was disabled. He probably had to walk with a cane at 19 years old. That the archaeologists believe that he fell because of this and fractured his leg that led to a gangrene infection where he died. King Tut, his father and his childhood. Let's talk about that. King Tut was the son of a powerful king, pharaoh, Akhenaten, and he, at the time of his birth, ancient Egypt was going through social and political upheaval because his father forbid the worship of other gods. His father was known as the heretic king, and there was just some issues there. Following his 17-year reign, he was done, and he was probably forced to abdicate But he died soon after that, and his 9-year-old son, King Tut, took power. Okay, so King Tut, he had a wife around 1332. The same year that he took power, he married I'll try to say this the best I can. Ankhesenamun. If you want to spell it, Ankhesenamun. It was his half-sister from his father and Queen Nefertiti. While the young couple, obviously, they were married so young, they did not have any surviving children. It is believed that King Tut's wife did give birth to 2 daughters later on, who were stillborn. Evidence indicates that following King Tut's death at 19, his wife contacted the king of the Hittites, which we talked about previously, asking for one of his sons as a husband. The Hittite king sent a candidate, but he died on the journey to Egypt, most likely assassinated before he even got to Egypt. This attempt to forge an alliance with a foreign power was most likely to prevent other control issues behind the scenes. King Tut's wife, later on married a man called it's just spelled A-Y, before she went off and disappeared into history. So King Tut was 9 years old, as I said, when he assumed power, and the first years of his reign were probably controlled by somebody else. A vizier would be the office that would guide a young king like this, a young pharaoh. And it's believed that this vizier wanted King Tut to reverse the decree to worship one god and to go back to polytheistic beliefs. King Tut had royal court moved back to Thebes, and he saw the old order restored, again hoping that the false gods of Egypt would look favorably on Egypt. He ordered the repair of some holy sites, and he oversaw the completion of the red granite lions at Soleb, which is another area of archaeological finds, and the red granite lions are there. He oversaw those. He wanted better relations with Egypt's neighbors, and while there is some evidence that there was some successful diplomacy, there was also problems, and they did have skirmishes and some battles. King Tut was trained in the military. There is some evidence that he was a good archer, but he most likely did not see any military action. There is no record of him going to battle, and as we know, he died at 19 years old. So that's a good wrap-up for King Tut. A lot of information in there. You don't need to know all that for the exam or anything. It's just good information to know of his life, of the most famous king, Pharaoh of Egypt. Okay, so we have the next one, Ramses. Would be Ramses II. He lived to be 90 years old at the time of his death. Most people died around 40 years old, so he lived a good long age, and so many believe that he definitely was a god because he lived so long. Obviously, we know that he was not a god. He was a warrior king, had many battles, had many victories, but he's mainly known because of his longevity and what he told his scribes to write about him. Remember on the exam, the bonus question was, for the online students, was who said the victors write the history. It was Winston Churchill said that. Well, definitely Ramses made sure that the scribes wrote well about him. There was the House of Life, which was a huge library dedicated to glorifying Ramses. So he was definitely interested in himself and making sure that his name continued on. I'm sure you've heard of that name, Ramses. He was the greatest builder in Egyptian history. Again, it's Old Kingdom on the top of that slide. It's supposed to be New Kingdom. We see a replica statue in Cairo of Ramses. This is just a replica because the original statue that was there was moved for safekeeping because of all the exhaust fumes damaging it. So there we got some other pictures of Ramses the Great. Again, you just have to ignore that Old Kingdom up there. This is under the New Kingdom. You can see a temple there built right into the side of the rock. Same temple at night. Valley of the Kings. I do want to just talk briefly here to wrap up this PowerPoint. Valley of the Kings. It's a long, narrow valley just west of the Nile River in Upper Egypt. It was part of the ancient city of Thebes and was the burial site of almost all the kings or pharaohs of the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasties from 1539 BC to 1075 BC, which would be from Thutmose I to Ramses X. You don't need to know those names, but just know that this is where many pharaohs were buried. It's located in the hills behind Dar al-Bahri, and there are 62 known tombs of different varieties. There, they have different types of plans to the tombs and also a wide variety of decorations for the tombs. Some were very elaborate, some were very simple, some were large, some were small. So you can see there on the map, it's kind of like right in the very center, you see the Nile River in green, kind of where there's that little loop in the Nile River, that little jut that kind of goes up or shoots out towards the Red Sea, I should say, that little kind of loop. You can see it says Valley of the Kings and then Valley of the Queens. And then Thebes is on the other side there, kind of where it says Red Sea, you see it says Thebes, just above where that little boat is. Okay, so you can see the Valley of the Kings is quite a distance from Giza, where the pyramids are, which is way up there at the top, quite a ways from Cairo. So you see how far away it is. There's a picture of the Valley of the Kings. It's kind of blurry, but you can see, you can make out where there's tombs and different things going on there. There's a up-close picture of it. Obviously, the walkways and all that have been redone to allow visitors to go see this. This is a tourist site. You can see the road there. So people go and check these things out. The New Kingdom, extreme prosperity, Renaissance, art, building projects. Towards the end of the 19th dynasty, the increasing power of the priesthood corrupted the central government. During the 20th dynasty, tomb robbing was occurring. Government breaks down, and so does Egypt. And it continues on. Egypt continues on, but never like it was in the New Kingdom. And it moves on all the way to where the Greco-Roman period. I mean, Egypt continues, but just not in the way that you think of as under the New Kingdom. For this slide here, it's important to know that the New Kingdom is the most prosperous time of ancient Egypt. Extreme prosperity. Okay, so that's it for this PowerPoint. A good look. Okay, class, that's it. That is it for the study of Egypt. Like I said, in session 3 for this week are 2 videos that you can go ahead and watch. Sometimes there might be some information in there that's good for bonus questions on the exam, but it's just good information to know, and it's interesting. So go ahead and take a look at those videos, and we'll just wrap this up for Egypt, and then we will be looking at the next civilization coming up next week. So other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. We'll see you later. Take care.